Let's begin by examining something we rarely question: comfort. We are taught to seek it. We are encouraged to build lives that feel stable, predictable, and safe. And on the surface, comfort seems harmless. It reduces stress. It provides familiarity. It allows us to function without constant anxiety. But what if the very thing that feels safe is the thing quietly holding you back? The comfort zone is not dangerous because it is painful. It is dangerous because it is pleasant. It does not alarm you. It does not challenge you. It simply allows you to remain the same. Psychologically, the human brain is wired to avoid uncertainty. It prefers familiarity because familiarity feels controllable. When you repeat the same behaviors, interact with the same environments, and pursue the same predictable routines, your brain conserves energy. There is no need for adaptation, no need for risk assessment, no need for growth. And this is where comfort becomes deceptive, because growth requires friction, it requires effort. It requires stepping into spaces where outcomes are not guaranteed. The comfort zone removes that friction, and in doing so, it removes the very conditions that allow development. Consider this: muscles grow only when they are challenged. When resistance is introduced, fibers stretch, strain, and rebuild stronger. Without resistance, there is no growth. The same principle applies to your mind, your confidence, your abilities. Yet the comfort zone convinces you that maintenance is enough. It tells you that staying where you are is stability, that repeating what works is wisdom, that avoiding discomfort is intelligence. But stability without progress slowly transforms into stagnation. Philosophically, life is movement. Everything in nature evolves, seasons change, rivers flow, trees grow. Nothing meaningful remains static. When you resist change in the name of comfort, you move against the natural direction of life itself. And the longer you stay comfortable, the more attached you become to that state. Comfort begins to feel like identity. You start defining yourself by what you know, what you've already achieved, what feels manageable. The idea of stepping beyond that becomes threatening, not because it is harmful, but because it disrupts familiarity. This is why people often stay in unfulfilling jobs, predictable routines, or limited ambitions. Not because they lack talent or dreams, but because the unknown feels more intimidating than the familiar, even if the familiar is unsatisfying. The comfort zone creates an illusion of safety while quietly shrinking possibility. You may not notice it immediately. There is no dramatic loss, no sudden collapse. Instead, there is gradual settling. You stop exploring. You stop risking. You stop questioning whether more is possible. And slowly, potential fades into routine. There is also an emotional comfort in predictability. When you know what to expect, you feel in control. But control is often confused with growth. True growth requires surrendering certainty. It requires entering situations where outcomes are not guaranteed. The irony is that what feels safe today may become your greatest limitation tomorrow. Skills that are not challenged become outdated. Confidence that is not tested becomes fragile. Dreams that are not pursued become regrets. The comfort zone does not shout, "Stay small." It whispers, "Stay safe." And that whisper is persuasive. It tells you that discomfort is unnecessary, that risk is reckless, that ambition can wait. But waiting has a cost. Every day spent avoiding challenge is a day spent reinforcing the boundaries of your current self. And boundaries harden over time. Psychologically, repetition strengthens neural pathways. The more you repeat safe choices, the more natural they feel. Eventually, stepping outside your comfort zone feels abnormal, even threatening. What was once a small hesitation becomes a strong resistance. This is why growth feels harder the longer it is delayed. Yet the purpose of recognizing this is not to reject comfort entirely. Rest has value. Stability has value. The problem arises when comfort becomes permanent instead of temporary, when it becomes a destination rather than a place to recover. Comfort should restore you, not define you. Because success, transformation, and fulfillment do not live inside predictability. They live where challenge exists, where uncertainty demands creativity, where fear requires courage. If you remain only where you feel safe, you protect yourself from discomfort, but you also protect yourself from opportunity. And so the real question is not whether comfort feels good. It often does. The real question is whether comfort is helping you grow or quietly keeping you still. Because the danger of the comfort zone is not that it hurts you, it's that it convinces you that standing still is enough. And if you want more from life, you must be willing to outgrow what once felt safe. Once we understand that comfort can quietly limit growth, the next layer becomes clear. What keeps us inside it is not always laziness, it is fear. But not the kind of fear we often imagine. Most people do not fear effort. They do not even fear failure as much as they fear uncertainty. Failure, at least, is familiar. We understand what it means. We can anticipate it. We know how it feels. But uncertainty is different. It has no clear shape. It offers no guarantees. It does not promise success or failure, only possibility. And the human mind finds possibility unsettling. Psychologically, our brains are designed to predict outcomes. Prediction creates a sense of control. When we know what is likely to happen, we feel safer navigating our environment. This is why routine feels comforting, not because it is always fulfilling, but because it is predictable. Stepping beyond the comfort zone disrupts that predictability. When you consider trying something new, pursuing a different path, or challenging your current limits, your mind does not immediately focus on potential reward. Instead, it scans for risk. It asks, what if this doesn't work? What if I fail? What if I lose what I already have? But beneath those questions lies something deeper. What if I cannot control what happens next? This is why people often remain in situations that are known but unfulfilling rather than pursuing possibilities that are uncertain but promising. The familiar struggle feels safer than the unfamiliar opportunity. Think about how often people stay in roles, environments, or habits they know are limiting simply because they are predictable. They know the challenges. They know the outcomes. They know how to navigate the discomfort they already understand. Uncertainty, however, demands adaptation, and adaptation requires courage. Philosophically, every meaningful transformation begins in uncertainty. Innovation, growth, reinvention, none of these emerge from predictability. They emerge when someone is willing to step into a space where outcomes are not guaranteed. Yet we are conditioned to equate certainty with security. We are taught to plan carefully, to minimize risk, to seek stability. These are valuable principles until they become excuses to avoid growth, because certainty rarely accompanies opportunity. The path that leads somewhere new is, by definition, unknown. And this is where many people misunderstand risk. Risk is not always reckless, sometimes the greater. Risk lies in remaining where you are. Stagnation is quiet but powerful. It does not announce itself as danger. It appears as stability, but over time it erodes potential. Imagine remaining in the same mental, emotional, or professional position for years simply because stepping forward feels uncertain. The cost is not immediate, but it accumulates. Skills remain undeveloped. Confidence remains untested. Possibilities remain unexplored. The mind convinces you that waiting is safer, but waiting often becomes permanence. There is also a psychological bias toward loss aversion. People tend to fear losing what they have more than they value gaining something new. This means the possibility of failure feels heavier than the possibility of success. So we cling to what we know, even when what we know is limiting. Yet everything meaningful learning, growth, achievement requires entering the unknown. Every skill you now possess was once unfamiliar. Every success was once uncertain. Uncertainty is not a sign to stop. It is a sign that something new is possible. And courage does not mean the absence of fear. It means acting despite it. It means recognizing that certainty is not a prerequisite for progress. When you begin to shift your perspective, uncertainty becomes less threatening and more intriguing. Instead of asking, what if this goes wrong, you begin asking, what if this leads somewhere meaningful? Possibility replaces hesitation. This does not eliminate fear entirely, but it reframes it. Fear becomes information rather than instruction. It signals that you are stepping beyond the familiar, not that you are making a mistake. Every time you choose growth over predictability, you weaken the grip of uncertainty. You begin to trust your ability to adapt. You begin to recognize that outcomes are rarely as catastrophic as imagined. You begin to understand that progress rarely begins with guarantees. And slowly, your relationship with uncertainty changes. It no longer feels like an enemy. It becomes a gateway. Because what lies beyond predictability is not chaos, it is potential. The comfort zone thrives on certainty. But the future you seek does not live there. It exists where outcomes are unclear, but possibilities are real. So the next time hesitation appears, ask yourself honestly, am I avoiding this because it is dangerous or because it is unfamiliar? Because growth does not require certainty. It requires willingness. And if you are willing to step into the unknown, you may discover that uncertainty is not what holds you back. It is what opens the door forward. Once you recognize that comfort can quietly limit you, and once you understand that fear of uncertainty keeps you anchored in the familiar, the final realization becomes inevitable. Transformation does not begin where comfort exists, it begins where comfort ends. Growth is not a gentle process. It does not emerge from repetition of what you already know. It does not appear while you remain surrounded by predictability. It begins the moment you step into a space that feels unfamiliar, even slightly unsettling. Psychologically, confidence is often misunderstood. Many people believe confidence must exist before action. They think they need to feel ready, capable, certain, and only then will they move forward. But confidence does not precede challenge. It follows it. Confidence is built through evidence, and evidence comes from experience. Each time you face something difficult and navigate through it, your mind gathers proof. I can handle this. But if you avoid challenge entirely, that proof never forms. The absence of difficulty does not protect your confidence, it weakens it. Because confidence grows through tested ability, not protected ease. This is why staying within comfort feels calm in the moment but leaves you fragile over time. Philosophically, transformation requires tension. Just as a seed must break its shell to grow into a plant, you must break familiar patterns to expand into a stronger version of yourself. The shell once provided protection, but if it remains intact forever, growth becomes impossible. The same applies to routine. Routine can provide structure, but it can also become a loop. When your actions remain unchanged, your results remain unchanged. And yet, many people expect different outcomes while repeating the same behaviors. This is not ambition, it is habit disguised as hope. Real change demands disruption. It requires stepping beyond what feels normal, trying something that may not work perfectly, speaking when silence feels easier, attempting what feels slightly beyond your current ability. Each of these actions stretches your limits, and in that stretch, transformation begins. Opportunities rarely appear within comfort. They exist in spaces where effort is required, where adaptation is necessary, where the outcome is not guaranteed. This is why new paths often feel intimidating, because they demand a version of you that does not yet exist. But that version is formed through the attempt. Every time you move beyond your comfort zone, you are not just achieving something externally, you are reshaping your internal identity. You begin to see yourself differently, not as someone who avoids difficulty, but as someone who engages with it. This shift is powerful. It turns fear into feedback. It turns discomfort into growth. It turns challenge into progress. Reinvention does not happen once. It happens repeatedly. Each new level of growth requires a new willingness to step beyond what once felt sufficient. You may become comfortable speaking and then need to learn leading. You may master a skill and then need to develop a new one. You may achieve stability and then need to pursue purpose. Each stage demands a new departure from comfort. And this cycle is not a sign of instability. It is a sign of evolution. The alternative is subtle but dangerous, remaining where you are because it feels manageable. Over time, what once felt like progress becomes maintenance. Maintenance becomes stagnation. And stagnation becomes regret. Because deep down, you sense that more was possible. Transformation requires a different relationship with discomfort. Instead of interpreting it as a threat, you begin to recognize it as a signal, a sign that growth is occurring, that your abilities are being tested, that your identity is expanding. This does not mean recklessness. It means intentional stretching. You do not need to abandon stability entirely, but you must refuse to let comfort become permanent. Each small step beyond familiarity strengthens resilience. Each attempt builds adaptability. Each challenge expands perspective. And gradually, what once felt impossible becomes manageable. What once felt intimidating becomes routine. And a new comfort zone forms, not one that limits you, but one that reflects your growth. The process repeats because transformation is not a destination. It is a continuous movement. Your next opportunity will not look like your last success. It will require new courage, new learning, new effort, and that is the invitation. Not to seek discomfort for its own sake, but to recognize that the life you desire exists beyond the boundaries of what currently feels easy. So when you encounter that quiet resistance, that moment where something feels slightly beyond your reach, do not retreat immediately. Pause. Consider that this may be the doorway to your next level, because comfort preserves who you are, but courage creates who you can become. And the moment you choose growth over ease is the moment transformation truly begins.